The Broncos play meaningful football in January. Welcome back to Bleav in the Broncos on the Bleav Network, sponsored by Bet Online. I'm Patrick Chiotti. That is Bri Maestas. Hi, Bri. How are you?
Hi,
how are you feeling after the after watching the Bengals game over and over and over again?
Yeah, just repeatedly. I think that's
Yeah.
to teach me a lesson of karma or something. But I'm feeling okay. We're on to the next one, and let's see how this one plays out.
They had 3 games to win one. We're down to the last one. Kansas City, Week 18. I'm still reeling after watching the Oregon Ducks get shellacked
Yikes.
by the Ohio State Buckeyes in the college football playoff. What can I say?
Something about that seating. I think there's something wrong with the
First, all 4 bye teams lost. All 4 of them. Maybe we don't have byes next time. Maybe we push it to 14 teams. No more byes. Either way, Ducks are out. Broncos still in it. Week 18. Carson Wentz officially going to be playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. This is our last regular season show of the year, Bri. Lot of mixed emotions after the Cincinnati game. I was so close in my score prediction as well. It was pretty close on that one. I felt like that game was going to be a little bit better than it was, but Joe Burrow did Joe Burrow things. How impressed were you with Joe Burrow versus this Denver Bronco defense?
Well, I very much so anticipated Joe Burrow having one of those games, a legacy game, if you will, when the season's on the line, much as it was for the Bengals. I just think that his offense is going to be able to get it done. What was frustrating, though, is that the defense, I think, could have put up a little bit of a bigger battle against Joe Burrow. And I think the Denver Broncos had an opportunity to go up against a very holy, and that holy without a W, or Holy, yeah, Holey, defense for the Bengals, because I couldn't understand why it made the Bengals defense look like they had their stuff together. And that's probably the part and parcel of the story of this Denver Broncos team and this season in general, as they have a lot of work to do in order to get themselves to a place where they're not making those tiny errors and decisions where it just ultimately costs them the game. You see them go up against good teams. I think the Bengals team is a good team. They've just fallen on a little bit of a rough patch. But when you have Joe Burrow, it's really hard to contest against that. And I'm not mad with how that game ended. I'm mad, like when you talked about they had 3 games to get it done and we're on a maybe 3-game slide. I'm just frustrated.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And I said we're not going to spend that much time talking about it. We're not. It was a hard game. It was fun. It was an exciting game. Definitely playoff vibes, though. Yeah. Definitely playoff vibes. Offense just needs to sustain drives, and we'll talk about that coming up in this episode of Bleav in the Broncos. We're going to talk about the Week 18 matchup. What's going to happen if this Denver Broncos team wins against Carson Wentz and the Kansas City Chiefs? I know, what a novel concept. The Broncos winning a football game late in the season? What? And then we're going to talk about what is going to happen if they lose this upcoming matchup. Where do the Broncos need to go from here? What units need to get upgraded or changed? Who could possibly not be on this team next season? And we're just going to break down the upcoming matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs. But first, we've got a message from our sponsors, Bet Online. They continue to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you, with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, NHL, to UFC. Head to Bet Online today and don't forget to use promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Again, that's BLEAV on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. And Bri, where we're going to start is with our first scenario. Playoff time always brings these scenarios. If the Cincinnati Bengals win against Russell Wilson and the Steelers, and the Dolphins lose to the Jets and the Broncos lose, the Cincinnati Bengals go into the playoffs. If the Dolphins win, there's so many scenarios. So we're going to use a little scenario of our own. If the Denver Broncos do win this game against the Kansas City Chiefs, they're automatically in the playoffs. What do you expect? They win. They go to Buffalo. You got to go play Buffalo in Buffalo. What's the goal for them to stay in the playoffs going into that hostile environment?
Gosh, it's crazy that we're having this conversation. And I think I'm going to reflect on this second half of the season very fondly for the fact that these expectations are not what I had for the Denver Broncos. So going into the hostile environment, such as Orchard Park, right? The Broncos defense has been propped up on a pedestal most of the season, and rightfully so. But they just had an inability to stop Joe Burrow. And we already talked about that. This kind of slide, like let's say if and when, because I don't want to jinx anything, but if they win against Kansas City, there's got to be a gear shift for this team, right? You got to carry the momentum forward, and I believe heavily in that. Like that is the whole name of the game, right? Hot hands in the NFL. The ball can bounce anyway. Anything can happen on Sunday, but I think if they go in to Orchard Park with enough momentum, then they're going to be able to keep this up against a really good team. Like Josh Allen and the Bills is the team that I really didn't want to face. And that's why it's really important. I think the goal against Buffalo, and listen, Broncos fans, do not at me, right? I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but the expectations for this team wasn't playoffs. So we got to be real here for a second. I think the Broncos need to make it interesting as a 7th seed against a 2, right? We've already won the 2024-25 season. Their goal should be to keep up with Josh Allen and the Bills. And then win or lose, it's got to be a valiant effort, because it's going to feel devastating, if they lose. But if it's by a score and they left everything else on the field, it's going to take a while for this to set in. But I think Broncos country will be happy enough with that effort in order to move into the offseason. Now, if they get absolutely pummeled in that wild card matchup, then you've got different questions to answer here. And if we want to talk about what keeps this Broncos team going through the playoffs and perhaps making them the team to beat, I think you've got to see it a little bit differently, a little cranked up version of this team where you're turning up their knobs to 11, and every single playmaker out there needs to rise to the occasion. Bo Nix, this is your swan song, right? You've scripted to be a red shirt year. It really wasn't going to be that important. And now you're leading your team into their first winning season, right? Since 2016. And now we're talking playoffs. But I think coaching also needs to be dialed in, ready to put your trust in that young quarterback. We've seen some decision making where it almost seems like you were playing not to lose. And then the defense will need to be a version where they leave their opponent shuddering. Like you've seen them wreck teams this year. They basically murdered the Jets. Like there's teams that aren't able to recover once they face this defense, but we've seen a little bit of a backslide here. But when we've seen them operating on all cylinders, it's pretty magnificent. And why not the Bills? Why not the Bills? And the other option, right, is to upset the Bills so much that when they go to take on Kansas City, they just leave them unable to make it to another Super Bowl, because I don't think I can watch that. I don't think I can let that happen.
I don't think so either. Bri, that's what you said there. That's fantastic. That's the exact mindset that we should be having as fans, is the fact that they're even in the conversation for a playoff spot when all of the media said that this was going to be the worst team in football, 5.5 wins, yada yada yada. It's impressive, but it's a stepping stone, right? And we have to think about I feel like we have to think about this in terms of building the program, because a lot of fans have instant gratification these
Yep.
days. They don't understand that building things takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day. You know what I mean? And Sean Payton, even going back to New Orleans, took him four complete seasons to get to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. 4 complete seasons. He did get to the playoffs in his first year in New Orleans, right? But then they had a couple of rough patches, right? A losing season, a 500 season, and then all of a sudden they're Super Bowl champions. It takes time to build these things. This is his second season, first season with a rookie quarterback. Things are looking on the up and up. And I think you just have to go into this playoff game against Buffalo and say, hey, we came into this building last season with a different quarterback, and we were able to get the job done. Let's keep that mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody expected us to win that game. Nobody expected this team to keep up with the MVP leader for some, Josh Allen, and we did it. And there's no reason why this team, who has a ton of the same guys, can't do that again, right? This is what those Hollywood scripts are made of. You got the underdog coming in. Nobody's going to favor the Broncos. If they win against Kansas City, and then they go into that game against Buffalo, they're going to be at maybe 10-point underdogs. Maybe I would probably put that up there. They're a juggernaut. This is the team that scares the crap out of me, Bri. And they've got a really good, their offensive coordinator is humming. He is doing a lot of the same things that he did with Joe Burrow at LSU, and I love to see it. But they're humming right now. Defense is playing a lot better than they have been. So that's not the team that we want to see in the playoffs, but it's the team that we're going to have to see in the playoffs. And it's scary. But Bri, if this Bronco team loses, geez, Lucy, if this Bronco team loses against Kansas City and they miss the playoffs, where do they go from here?
I mean, we have to talk about it, and we have to think about either side of the coin and what happens here. But thanks for backing me up on that, because I think that's the thought process that we have to have. Winning a Super Bowl is incredibly difficult, right? And obviously it's so hard, but making the playoffs is something that sets you apart from all of the other teams. And I think that's just a really great, if that's the stepping stone you're using, I think that's a really great jumping off point. So really excited about that. But okay, they lose and they need to make some adjustments. I think the Broncos could very easily end their season on a heartbreaking note, right? They needed to win one of their last 3 and they could end up losing out. And I know you keep saying, it's Carson Wentz, but Carson Wentz is a grizzled veteran who Andy Reid made his backup quarterback for a reason. So I want everyone to kind of temper their expectations there, that they're going up against a Jameis Winston. We have to be prepared for that. So if they lose, I could see this kind of cloud follow the Denver Broncos into the offseason. It's gonna lead to magnifying glasses on their decisions moving forward, because as you said, we are a fickle crew. And the season it's already a success, but there's been some late stage crumbling. And I think it's going to sully the Broncos country fans, regardless of the hope that the midseason push really created. And I could see a potential of a couple of individuals not being on this team moving forward in positions that have been both important and underachieving. So you have a Cody Barton, a Javonte Williams, and DJ Jones, who could all be in different uniforms come next season. Now, I would hope that, given the tendency for the defensive line to be super important for your defense moving forward, that there will be a push for DJ Jones to re-sign. But there's an emphasis here that Sean Payton is going to want to take all positional groups to the next level, whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of question marks that I have there with where they're going to go, but it also leads to the question of what kind of talent needs to be elevated. You said, right, worst roster in the league. Well, I don't know if I agree wholeheartedly with that statement. I don't think I have from the beginning, right? But outside of a couple of strong players, I don't think they've achieved what they want moving forward, especially when we talk about the run game. And I know we beat that dead horse so badly, but it ties with talent and coaching with a sprinkle of the offensive line. And
Yep.
I think steps need to be taken to rectify this glaring hole. And what they are lie in the play call sheet of Sean Payton, right? So
Run
and
it.
that is, you got, okay, if you're going to run it, right? But the idea here is that Broncos country thinks that an Ashton Genty or a Scadaboo is going to fix the
No.
Denver Broncos run game. And I want to point out here that would they be used correctly, and would it be the best fit for those players? And I love the best player available notion there. Keep adding talent when it's available, but you've got needs at tight end. You need to bolster your offensive line and defensive line, right? Garrett Bowles is the backup, needs a backup of the future. And you need to look into the secondary, because we're in that time frame where it's like, well, have they fallen off? No, they're just lacking bodies. So looking at safety, I think, is super important moving forward. But I think every bit of this roster could use some tweaking here. And the focus needs to be getting Bo Nix a lot of help. And whatever that looks like, right? I think you can find running backs throughout the draft. If the best one available is there, take them, right? But I don't want to get caught up in this idea that a running back is going to plug the hole in which the run game is going to get something started. Right now, I think it's a strategy issue. And I would hate, I'm not going to blame the offensive line, but there's key indicators where there is not an option for any explosivity to happen. So that just needs to be looked at in the off season. And it's not going to be solved with a player. It's going to be solved with a mindset moving forward.
Absolutely. I'm so happy that you brought that up, because that's like, for me, when I watch this team, like the run game, like we've talked about it, the run game is an issue. Is it scheme? Is it personnel? I think it's a healthy mix of both. I think there's times where Sean is like, Sean's in his bag. The beginning of the Chargers game, he was in his bag. Yeah. He was in his bag. He was calling great concepts and then goes away from it. Kind of the same thing in Cincinnati happened. He's calling great concept. Jaleel in the third quarter, my goodness, we did just running duo with Jaleel, and he was eating off of it. And you go away from it. And it's like, why are you going away from it, Sean? There's no reason. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But Chris Harris brought this up after the Chargers game and after the Bengals game as well, where the Broncos might need to look at upgrading the interior offensive line a little bit. Whether that is replacing Ben Powers or whether that is replacing Luke Wattenberg. And I've, we all know my feelings about Luke Wattenberg, but is there a solution? Like, is Alex Forsythe the solution? I don't think so. Not at this point, right? Maybe after a full off season and training, maybe Forsythe comes back better, but he's a much better run blocker, not as good as of a pass blocker. But if we want to establish the run game, the center position is the one that is the most important in that aspect. And I can't go another week of watching our center run zone runs and his first steps are backwards. I can't do it. Is Ashton Jeanty going to fix that? Like you said, is Ashton Jeanty going to fix that, or Cam Scadaboo going to fix that? Is Caleb Johnson going to fix that? No, none of those guys are. They're fun players to have, absolutely. But until you fix those key issues, it's not going to happen. You also, I love the fact that you brought up, are they even going to be used right? I had a buddy of mine ask me yesterday about Scadaboo, and he was like, potential Bronco. And I was like, honestly, no. Like, I don't see that, because Sean Payton is not going to use that guy right.
Yeah.
He's not going to utilize him. He's going to do a very similar thing that we're seeing him do with Javonte Williams, with Audric Estime, where he tries to make this guy into something that he's not. So I don't think that that's the area that they need to fix. I love the fact that you brought up DJ Jones. I feel like DJ Jones they need to sign him to an extension today before 10 o'clock my time. It needs to get done. He's an absolute wrecking ball still. But there's still other areas where maybe they need to improve. The safety position, you brought that up. That's exactly where my head is at. The safety market is not looking great. There's a couple of safeties in this draft that might be good gets, but like, I feel like there are more areas of concern that I have and if they don't make the playoffs, we're talking about them drafting 20th, somewhere around 20th. There. Are you going to be there for Tyler Warren? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably going to go higher. Are you going to be there for Janty? No. He's going to be a Cowboy. So you have to start looking at some of these other positions, and this is a weaker draft class, so maybe the move is to trade down, get more assets so that you can collect more of those mid-round guys who aren't really stars. And this is the other thing that we need to think about is they're not like every person wants when they do a mock draft, they're like, oh, I'm going to, this 6th round pick isn't a starter. He's not going to be an all-pro right away. No, we need to draft depth. We need to draft good, solid depth because as much as I love JL Skinner, not a ton of reps playing in the defense, right? We need a guy who's going to be a solid contributor in the secondary. We need another cornerback. Like I think Riley Moss being injured showed we need some better bodies in the secondary. You mentioned Cody Barton potentially not being on this team next year. Who's going to replace that, right? So I think there's so many areas where this Broncos team needs to improve and get better. But again, this is the Sean Payton effect, right? Like, gets to New Orleans, drafts for. I saw somebody say in the Bleacher Report post game after the Cincinnati game, Sean Payton doesn't draft running backs high. He drafted Reggie Bush 2nd overall. He's not afraid to draft a running back in the 1st round. Okay, but he like the way that he built those teams in New Orleans. It was like, I don't care if I have a number 1 wide receiver, I'm still going to use a 1st round pick on a wide receiver. Or I don't care if I have a good starting tackle, I'm going to use a 1st round pick on another tackle. So he's going to build this team in a way that supplements. He's not going to be looking for an all-pro right out the gate. He's not going to be looking for a star wide receiver in the 1st round. He's just going to be looking for guys who can fit his scheme and who can supplement. And the same will go for free agency. They've got a ton of money to spend. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the center market kind of open up a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if they throw a little money at a veteran center, because they need somebody who has experience in these situations, and with an offensive line where you've got veteran, now Quinn Miners, now a veteran, and Mike McGlinchey, a veteran, you've got like, it's the dragon meme, right? Like right in the middle is the one with its tongue sticking out and cross-eyed. So you've got to figure out, the biggest areas of need. And right now, I think he needs to have a little bit of self-awareness as well and say, where did I fail? And would love to have a sit down with him, go over some tape and be like, I just want to know why you called this play in this situation. I just want to know why you called this sequence of plays in this situation with the personnel that you have. I think there's a lot of answers for some of his decisions that we haven't gotten. that we're going to need in the postseason. How is he going to fix it going forward? It's going to be interesting to see. I think one of the key guys that I don't see being on this team next year, and this might be a hot take.
Bring it.
But I don't see Ben Powers on this team next year. I don't see it.
Okay.
I don't see him being on this team next year. I think he's going into the last year of his contract next year. And they moved some money around. So I think his cap hit's a little bit better for next season. But like, I just like his play has been so up and down, and like you're one of the highest paid guards in the league. Like I don't know. I just don't see it. I think maybe they upgrade.
Where we're gonna maybe have to fight, not necessarily because I disagree with you, but where are you getting appreciable or a markedly different production? One, from a veteran, and two, when you create a lack of continuity along the line, which your whole point is with Luke Wattenberg, you're creating that ability for that line to not function at their best. Because no matter how many veterans you have, your weakest link is going to be formulaically responsible for the downturn production that you've seen out of the run game now. And I don't know why, and this is why I want to lean on you a little bit, is how can it be so good in pass protection and then fail so completely in the run game? And I know that they're different. I know that the sets are going to be different there. Like, it's not like it befills me that I don't understand. I get it. It's just, where and how would you even fix that hole if you take away Ben Powers and you're saying, okay, we can get better production out of another guard? I don't know, right? Like the best thing for the Broncos has been their depth right there. You would be able to call Quinn Bailey and have him available just to step in for you and get, similar production. You don't have that anymore, right? After that leg injury during training camp, you probably are not going to see Quinn Bailey again. There hasn't been a drafted and in developmental effort here by the Denver Broncos to bolster their offensive line. So you can't even stick somebody in there for the meantime while you try to figure that out. And I do realize your point, right? Like, if the center market opens up, if you've got someone who can switch those two positions, you're seeing a little bit of, I don't know if I feel comfortable with it, but I just don't know. Taking Ben Powers away in those circumstances would make me feel a little nervous, and I want to fight. I think it is a hot take, so congrats. You made me uncomfortable.
I think where it comes from is based on what we have seen from Sean in his play calling. He is leaning heavily, like really heavily, into being a zone running team. And I think maybe it's part of having Bo Nix as the quarterback so you can run, like zone is obviously going to be a little bit better for his athletic ability, but like it's such a, like, I'm not saying I want them to get rid of Ben Powers. I just don't think that, I think the stars are going to align in the fact that like maybe they can cut him and save more money and spend that, because like Tevin Jenkins is going to be a free agent. Trey Smith is going into free agency, which that's, massive. Like, you would have to figure out, do we move Quinn to the left side, which maybe isn't a terrible idea. But he's so but there's some other guys that are on this list that are younger, maybe a little, maybe fit what Sean Payton is trying to do a little bit more. But I just I don't see it. I've been so confused with how Sean has used Ben Powers over the last 2 years, because Ben Powers came from the Greg Roman offense, which is really like gap heavy and like pulling, and he was fantastic in those situations. But Sean is clearly more intended on running zone, and that's just not where Ben Powers is. Like, that's not where his strength is. Like, get this guy out. Get him moving, he's a tough son of a bitch. Don't get me wrong, but like, I feel like they're just not utilizing him correctly. And to me, it's odd because I look across the line and I see Mike McGlinchey, wide zone guy. right? Came from San Francisco, came from the wide zone run scheme, like athletic guy, zone guy. Then you have Miners, who strikes me as a gap guy. He wants to get moving. He wants to get a free reign at a linebacker or a DB. Like he wants to just get nasty. Then you
Pro
have
Bowl
Watton,
snub, by the way.
Pro Bowl snub. Yeah, Pro Bowl snub. We didn't even talk about that. And then you have Wattenberg, who I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you at this point. And then you have Powers, gap guy, and then you have Bowles, who not a zone guy. Garrett Bowles, not a zone guy. I watch him get lost in zone every single week. Get him going on gap. So you've got a bunch of gap guy or three gap guys, three true gap guys, we should say, and then like one, who knows, and then one zone guy. And we're just running zone to the death. And it's mind-boggling to me. I know we're getting on another zone gap tangent, but like that's kind of where that hot take comes from, is like if you have this personnel and you have this type of personnel, why are you calling the game the way that you are?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing, Pat. Maybe you gotta switch that up a little bit and say, use your guys, especially the ones that you paid this amount of money for, and do what is a benefit to them. And yeah, I love it. It's that damn square peg in the round hole.
Yeah, you got it. Bri, let's go to week 18. Let's come to the now. Enough of the hypotheticals, enough of the what ifs. Let's go to now. Kansas City playing Carson Wentz, sitting most of their starters. We kind of talked about this before the program, but Chris Jones probably not playing, Pacheco probably not playing, Kelsey probably not playing, McDuffie maybe not playing.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that is a big one. They do get Jalen Watson back, which is great for the Chiefs. Broncos side, most people should be healthy. I think Frank Crum was the only one who was out. He is currently going through an illness, but Zach Allen, Ben Powers, both full participants in practice. What do the Broncos need to do in this game in order to secure their spot in the playoffs? Because the pass defense has been lacking. They've dropped all the way down to, I think they're like 25th in the league in passing defense. Yikes. Now the Broncos are. Still, the passing game has kind of come up in the last 6 games, Bri. The Broncos have scored 31.7 points a game, 237 passing yards a game, which is like pretty, it's actually like up there. I think it's top 10 in the league in passing yards over that time frame. 96.5 rushing yards a game during that time. Offensive EPA of 7.36. So the offense has been playing better, but not good enough. So what do they need to do in this game?
I think that's the name of the game for this Denver Broncos team, right? They're just not consistent enough. But I like that they've moved past the mid-tier point. They're not in the bottom half of the league. They're rustling around the midpoint of this NFL. I want to say the NFL in its entirety. But this game is we've been calling all of these games trap games. This game, but this
is
game
the ultimate.
This is the ultimate, right? Like they are backed into a corner. You're going up against a bunch of second stringers, right? The Chiefs team wants to win because they're the Chiefs. They're not just going to phone it in, but this Denver Broncos team and teams in general, right? We always talk about it. It doesn't matter who it is, if it's your home team or whatever. You see a good team or an okay team or a hard fighting team go up against a not at their best team, and it just becomes this, wow, they should be killing them. What exactly is going on here? And this is the exact thing that I'm setting myself up for, because I can't have high expectations. The Bengals game nearly killed me with how high I was on it. I was nervous I haven't been nervous for a Broncos game in God knows how long. And now I'm sort of I'm trying to maintain, it's going to be fine. Sunday's going to be cold. The throwback uniforms are going to be on. So I need this Broncos team to come out with as much fire and I guess, meanness as they can bring to the
Nasty.
surface. Like, yeah, be nasty, be gritty, be scrappy, because we've seen this team be scrappy. We see it not only on the defense, but on the offense. Get it done, right? I don't think Bo Nix is going to be a contributing factor to why, if they do end up falling, they lose to this Chiefs team, because I think he's going to leave it all out on the field. I think that is just part and parcel of his personality, and who he is as a player, as an individual. But I'm worried about this game because I could just see it being a defensive showdown, right? The Chiefs obviously are going to be able to keep this Broncos team in low scoring endeavors, but this Broncos defense has been having a rough go at it. So it's like, if you're unbalanced in that portion of your game, like, this is the perfect opportunity. And I hate the use of the word bounce back at this point, but what are they going to show all of us in this last and final game? So I think you need to see more points on the board, right? The last matchup of these two was 16-14. It was the defensive showdown I was talking about. And I kind of want to see more of that in the same sense of it. But I need to see one thing differently. And it's got to be finishing the game, finish strong, right? Walk away from the battle with a win. The Broncos are hungry. And you can tell it's like a different sort of sense that you're getting from the locker room. Before, it was like, I'm sick of losing. We got to get them next time. And now it's like they know their percentage chances. They know what they need to do to get win. They're fired up. They're not head down after a loss. It's just like excited about what the next game holds. And that's meaningful football in January. And I'm never going to take that for granted. But they've been failing recently to get it done. Like, the going against the grain is what's going to get this done, right? It's calling something out of your conservative nature. It's the not starting off hot and then completely disintegrating in the second half, or alternatively, starting extremely slow in the first half and then trying to get it done in the fourth quarter, right? If you can't convert your points on all of the opportunities that are bestowed upon you, then you got to capitalize on something like a turnover. And you have to be so efficient in the end zone because you have so many limited opportunities to get there. And this team in the last 2 games has made some of the most boneheaded mistakes that I've seen, and they've just added up enough to where they've contributed to this Broncos team being in the position that they are. I wish somebody would like clip where I was before the Chargers game and then where I am right now, and just be like, you can tell I've just been socked in the face, and I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this again. I'm sick of being tired. I don't want to be punched in the nose anymore. But I'll be there. I'm excited about it. I know this is huge to be excited about a Week 18 matchup. Again, I know I sound like the broken record, but I'm excited that the Denver Broncos are in this position. We just need to see a different dialed up version of this Denver Broncos team where it's not like, wow, if only our offense had scored more than 17 points, we'd really have got that done. Just give me more at this point.
Bri, I think the big thing for me in this game is, like you said, continuity throughout the game. We cannot afford to play the game the same way that we have the last 3-4 games, where it's we were kind of, we come out first drive and we turn the ball over, right? And then it's like, we're playing from behind. We get offensive line penalties that put us at, 1st and 15, or 2nd and 20. And, we're playing behind the sticks again, something that has just been a constant theme throughout this last stretch of games. And it really comes down to, is Sean Payton going to play for a draft pick, or is he going to play for a playoff spot? We heard him say after the Cincinnati game that they were playing for the tie. That angered me a little bit. It pissed me off. And we all saw the picture of Bo holding up the 2, wanting to go for the win, go for the jugular. Who cares? Like, that to me, in that moment, that solidified Bo Nix as our franchise quarterback. And I think in this game, he is going to try and do everything he can to get to the playoffs. Now, this is a deep-rooted conspiracy theory, Bri, and I'm going to lay it out here. But the Oregon Ducks loss to Ohio State is going to piss off Bo Nix to the point where he is going to go. The kids would call it sicko mode, but we're just going to call it nuclear Knicks, because he's the throw that he made to Marvin Mims, both the throws that he made to Marvin Mims in the Cincinnati game were absolute. Like, it was like we were watching him at Auburn again. It was like we were watching him have to play hero ball. Just to remind everybody, Bo Nix spent 3 seasons at the University of Auburn, and he had one of the like worst talented rosters during that time. And he had to play a ton of hero ball, and we saw flashes of it against Cincinnati. I think we're going to see some flashes of it against Kansas City. I think this is a really hard team to run against. Very, very still hard team to run against. I think you run Jaleel as much as you can. They were kind of telling against Cincinnati with Javonte in the backfield. I think he only ended up with like 1 carry. But he was in there for a ton of passing situations. So maybe try to play off of that a little bit. But I would love to see them get back to the RPO game against this Chiefs defense, because they were using it heavy against, in the middle of the season. That first game that they played against Kansas City, they were utilizing RPO quite a bit. And then against Atlanta, they were utilizing RPO very well. And Bo Nix had his best game of the season. So I think if you get back to a little bit of that, stop trying to just go deep all the time. It's not going to work. Right? Like, we've got to get some of these intermediate passes. We've got to get the quick stuff going, because that's going to help Bo get into a rhythm. And it's also going to help the run game start to spread out the box a little bit, get some easier looks for Jaleel and Audric, and also use Bo Nix in the run game, for God's sake. You've got a quarterback who is athletic. I've been watching a little bit of Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, and specifically how they use him in the run game. And it is, boy, yeah, like have Matt watch some of this stuff, because it's some high level offensive line play, but it's also some high level offensive design. So I would love to see Sean maybe take 1 or 2 concepts of that and utilize that for Bo Nix. On the other side, this defense needs to buckle down. Like, you're not playing Patrick Mahomes. Consider yourselves lucky, right? Because I thought for many weeks, and I said this, I thought, hey, they're going to play their starters. You have to operate under the assumption that they're going to, because I don't think that they would want to see them in the playoffs. They're going to have to go to Buffalo. They're going to have to play Josh Allen. They'll be fine. But what if they win? Then there's some issues that start to come up. And do you want to see that team in the playoffs? Do you want to have to play the Broncos in a conference championship game?
Right.
I don't think so, because that week 18 game is going to come back. Hey, you didn't want to play us. You ducked us. Now we're here.
We've seen you 3. You were going to see you a 3rd time, and all of that. Yeah.
So I think the defense just needs to buckle down. Just put, it's not the same quarterback as Mahomes. Wentz is not. I don't feel like he's as slippery as Mahomes is. Not to say that he's not slippery. He's slippery in his own sense, but it's not the same quarterback. You've got to just play the way that they've been playing the quarterback in these last few games. I've said it on each of our shows. If they start running with the quarterback, we're screwed. Joe Burrow did it. Justin Herbert did it. You've got to be able to stop the quarterback. I think they get 5 sacks in this game.
Ooh.
I think Benito gets 1.5 sacks in this game. And maybe we see a Pat Surtain interception. I know DeAndre Hopkins is going to play because he's got some bonuses and stuff. So that's going to be a matchup to watch. But yeah, I think they just need to change. They need to change certain things from their last matchup. But it's that 3rd, 4th quarter play calling to me that needs the biggest boost, because we saw against Cincinnati, they had no true plan coming out. It was just kind of like, we're just going to we're going to just take the deep shots. Like, that's literally what we saw, and got to be able to move the ball. So I think it's going to be tough. Bri, what do you think this score prediction is going to be?
I had to go look what I reported for Let's Talk Broncos so that all my score predictions lined up. I have to choose the Broncos. I think it's going to be close, just given the nature of the game and probably my blood pressure and all the same. But I'm gonna say 21-17. And I'm gonna go Broncos because it's the 1,000th game here going on, and
it's the 1,000th home game.
Yeah.
Oh,
regular season. It's regular season game in the franchise's history, with only 12 teams prior to this week having played over 1,000 regular season home games. So
wow, some history.
I know in history, and then Sutton's going to get his 1,000-yarder. Bunch of Denver Broncos are nearing records for the franchise, which is exciting. The Broncos just set a franchise record for the season with 58 sacks. So add your 5 on, that's 63. Don't come at me for math. I don't like it. There's just a lot of fun that can happen in this game. I think that they will ultimately pull it off, and we'll be able to have, at least one more game preview headed towards y'all. So yeah, I feel good. I feel good about it.
At least one more, Bri says. I'm crunching my numbers really quick. I'm going to say Broncos. This is going to be high scoring for this offense. I'm going to say 35. Let's say 35-17 Broncos. That's what my bad math is telling me. I think this is going to be one of those games where Chiefs are going to be playing second stringers. Broncos are going to be playing their starters. We hope for a solid matchup, but I think that this game is really important, and I think Sean is going to come with a better game plan than he did last week. Play for the win, don't play for the tie, for God's sakes. Bri will be there in person. If the Broncos clinch, you're going to get a happy episode next week. If the Broncos don't clinch, you're going to get a full-on tirade from the both of us, probably a 2-hour tirade about this Denver Broncos team. Bri, any last words for Broncos country?
We haven't been in this position in a really long time, Broncos country. So enjoy it while it lasts. Sunday is going to be nerve-wracking, but it's also going to be a great time. And yell your heads off if you're there with me. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos. Follow Bri and I on X, Blue Sky, at Bri Maestas 303, at Patrick Chiotti. Follow Bleav Network as well. Make sure that you subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Make sure you go over to the YouTube channel and subscribe there. You can catch Bri on Let's Talk Broncos. You can catch me on Altitude Adjustment. And I will be on Bleacher Report live after the game to discuss whether or not the Broncos got into the playoffs. For Bri, for myself, go Broncos. We'll see you next time.